ladies and gentlemen, to an all-new reaction and review. Tonight, guys, we are continuing the countdown to episode 600 by taking a look at the movie that came in 7th place in the episode 600 tournament. It's a horror movie from 1973. That movie is Don't Look in the Basement. I really wish I could tell you much about this movie, guys. I actually do remember watching the trailer for it when I put it on the episode 600 bracket. But unfortunately, I don't remember much from that trailer. I do know that the titular basement is the basement of a psychiatric ward, and that's where all of my memory ends. I could not tell you a single thing about this movie beyond that. The only other thing I know is this movie's history as a video nasty over in England. God, I should really make a video just talking about the video nasties and how utterly stupid that entire thing was. But that's me flying way off topic. Let's focus on the movie here. I have no idea if this thing is any good. I do know that there was a sequel made, but I'm not going to bother watching the sequel if this thing sucks. And I really do want this thing to be good, and if it is, then I can dive into the sequel, and that sounds like it might be fun. But once more, I'm jumping way ahead of myself. I don't know if the original Don't Look in the Basement is any good. I'm certainly hoping so. But the only way I'm going to find out, guys, is if I shut up and I push play. And I'm going to do that right now. So, without further ado, it's time to kick back, relax, and check out Don't Look in the Basement. Okay, guys, I'm just going to say this right now. The patients in this movie are incredibly creepy, and I think the reason why is because instead of playing them up like your normal movie mental patients who are screaming and giggling and bouncing off of padded fucking walls, they all seem genuinely, realistically disturbed and deranged. And it really makes the whole thing a little bit unsettling and creepy. And it's that kind of atmosphere which is going to make this movie fucking awesome. I can just feel it. You know, guys, every time I think I've seen the creepiest I can possibly see from all these different patients, the movie finds ways to make this whole thing even more unsettling and creepy. I'm loving it. But there has to be a point when we hit maximum creep, and these patients are not going to be able to surprise me any further. My God, I'm almost afraid to see exactly where that, threshold is. But I think it's going to be a rather entertaining trip getting there. Something just dawned on me, guys. This movie really doesn't have a whole lot of plot to speak of. I mean, it's been really fascinating looking at all these patients and seeing all the shit that goes on with them and looking at all of their different states of mental illness. Unfortunately, there is no real story driving anything. It's just, hey, why don't we look at all of these, deranged lunatics for 90 minutes? At least that's how it's feeling. I'm certainly hoping that we get some semblance of a, story or a plot in the last half hour, because honestly, guys, the whole novelty of just looking at maniacs being maniacs kind of wore itself thin about 15 minutes ago, and I would really like a story right about now. Well, guys, I did ask for a plot to finally kick in. It did. Feels kind of weak. My God, this thing started off so promising, guys. It was so fascinating, so interesting. And now it's slowly falling, very quickly falling to pieces, let's be honest. I'm actually kind of happy that it's almost done. Well, guys, that was Don't Look in the Basement. Let me shut that off. Okay, before I start talking about the movie, and yes, I do have quite a bit to talk about with the movie, I need to discuss something. I need to discuss the copy of the movie that I got. You see, I decided to put Don't Look in the Basement on the episode 600 tournament bracket because The movie was a bonus feature on the Blu-ray of the sequel, which was released by a company called Legless Corpse Films. Here are a couple of little factoids for you. Number one, Don't Look in the Basement is a movie that is in the public domain, which means you don't have to pay any, you don't have to pay any royalties for it. You can download it, you can upload it, you can do whatever the hell you want with it for free, and not run afoul of copyright goofiness, shenanigans, or what have you. It is in the public domain. It is free for the public to use. Because of that, there are dozens of different edits and versions of this film, all of them in varying states of wear, let's say. You would think, since, Legless Corpse put out the Blu-ray with the sequel, that they would have found the best print possible for this movie. They didn't. The print for the movie that wound up on this Blu-ray disc is horrendously scratched. The sound at times is so muted you can barely hear it. The music barely picks up. There are points where the film was so horrendously, irreparably damaged that they had to cut whole swaths of film out of this thing. So there are rampant jump cuts everywhere, and fuck only knows how much stuff I actually missed out on. The one point when it was most noticeable was in the final act, when our main character, Dr. Beale, is going down into the basement. She looks to be carrying this big foam thing. I don't know what the fuck it was, because the film is so scratchy and distorted and nasty, I couldn't tell what the fuck damn near anything was. And then something in the basement reaches for her, and then she starts beating it with this foam thing, and then there's a jump cut. Suddenly, Dr. Masters is at the top of the stairs, and Dr. Beale is like halfway back up the stairs. So whatever the fuck I missed, I'm going to assume that the hand and the body she was beating probably belonged to Dr. Stevens. I'm going to take a guess. I don't fucking know. That's probably what was cut, was that chunk of film, because it was so horrendously damaged that you couldn't save it. Now, with that in mind, there are probably numerous edits of the movie, numerous copies you can find everywhere that have that scene. Why Legless Corpse Films could not have found a complete cut of this film to put on the Blu-ray for their fucking sequel, I do not understand. Now, with all of that in mind, I am going to talk about the version that I did see, and I'm going to try to not talk about the horrendous state of the print that they put on the Blu-ray disc. I just wanted to talk about it here because, god damn it, this is fucking lazy on a massive scale, and I'm kind of pissed because I would honestly have expected a company who's putting this fucking thing on Blu-ray to have at least found the best possible copy available. If this thing here is the best copy available, then there's no point in even trying to watch it. This is horrible. Now, let's talk about the film itself, at least what I got to watch of it, considering all of the technical problems with this print of the film. Story. I mentioned early on that it was really fascinating following all of these patients. And then as I watched more, and as it dawned on me that there really wasn't much of a plot to speak of, it then dawned on me, I don't know anything about most of these patients. I barely know their names. Like, I know Sam, because he's the one patient we seem to follow the most, but I don't know anything about Sam, outside of the fact that Dr. Stevens at one point performed a goddamned lobotomy on him for reasons I do not fully understand, and he has the mental capacity of a 7-year-old. I don't know anything else about him. I don't know why he was there in the first place. I don't know what he did to actually cause Dr. Stevens to go in and saw out a chunk of his brain, but oh well, I guess I'm just left with Sam has the fucking capacity of a 7-year-old. He has the mindset of a 7-year-old. The sergeant, we are given a vague thing about some tragedy that happened when he was in combat. I'm going to assume in Vietnam, considering the year this thing was made. But we're never given any other details as to what exactly that tragedy was that caused him to go into essentially a permanent fucking post-traumatic stress flashback. But hey, At least I know that he was a sergeant. I know that much. I don't know anything about... I mean, there's one patient who they actually go into a nice little in-depth thing about how she's ridiculously clingy and she has essentially almost like a bipolar cocktail fucking personality mix, which is ridiculously creepy in and of itself, and how she seems almost like a nympho amongst any man that she comes near. Yeah, and they kind of sort of explain her, so I know about her, and I know fuck all about the, like, frizzy-haired dude. I don't know anything about the little old lady outside of the fact that she sees things. I don't know anything about the chick who carries around the doll and thinks it's a fucking baby. I can totally take guesses, but they don't bother to actually explain anything about it. So ultimately, as fascinating as it is to follow these patients and to see exactly how Dr. Beale handles each of them, you don't know anything about them because they don't bother to put any depth into them. And this is your entire cast, is Dr. Masters, Dr. Beale, and all of these patients. And none of them get fleshed out except for one who's in the film probably the least. And that's the nympho with the cocktail personality and the bipolar complex. You don't know anything else about any... I don't even know her fucking name. Because the movie is so awful at giving out names. I am honestly surprised. I actually fucking remembered that Dr. Beale's last name was Beale. Fucking hell. Anyway... So, our characters are written horribly, which is shocking, because what we do see is really cool, but there's no attempt at fleshing out anybody. And we then have a twist in the final act, and I really don't want to spoil it in case you can find a copy that's better than the shit that's on this Blu-ray disc. That twist, it really does seem to come out of nowhere. I did note a couple of hints going into it, but I really didn't think those hints through much. And then when the twist hits, every single one of those hints popped back into my head, and I'm like, shit, they actually did telegraph this. And they did it really well. It was done in a really subtle fashion. So the twist was handled really well. I kind of wish we had a little bit more plot in the first hour. Would have been nice if we'd have gotten to know the characters better. I would probably have been happy if the first hour would have been spent fleshing out all of these characters instead of just going, hey, look, crazy people, laugh at them. Well, no, it's not really laugh at them, but just, behold crazies. And not explain a thing about any of them, save for one who's in the movie, no fooling, for less than 20 minutes. Actually, I'm giving this movie way too much fucking credit. She's maybe in the movie for about 6 minutes. And she's the only one who you actually get to know anything about. I would have loved to have learned more about most of these characters. I know one of them is in the sequel. I'm hoping that we get a bit more explanation there. Anyway, I'm done talking about writing because there's not much here for writing. And when I will say though that when the fucking twist happens and when the plot kicks in for that last like 20 to 25 minutes, it's a really fascinating 20 to 25 minutes, and it's great. I kind of wish that there was that much care put into the rest of the fucking movie, but no, there really isn't. Writing here is kind of sort of a mess. Acting. Right here is where the movie rebounds from having kind of a piss-poor script, is that the acting, especially for a low-budget film in the 70s, is incredibly decent. Mind you, most of these actors are playing mental patients. And when most people think about playing crazy, they think about playing it to the absolute extreme. And the actors do not do that here. The characters who are playing mental patients seem to actually get into the head of the patient which they are playing, and they play them realistically. Which is great. There's one character who's a giggling fucking maniac, but that honestly seems to be all he has, is that he has frizzy hair and that he's a giggling fucking maniac. You don't know, I honestly don't even think that they ever mentioned his fucking name. At least I don't remember them mentioning his name. I just know that he's a patient there. But every other character is played incredibly well. The actor who is cast as Sam, going into it knowing that Sam has had his brain carved up, that he has the mindset of a child. He plays that incredibly well, and he gives Sam the kind of fucking innocence you wouldn't get from most other performances if someone knows that they're supposed to play a childlike character. There's actually something natural about it. In fact, that is the one thing I'm going to say about this whole cast, is all of them are very natural in their various forms of mental, oddity. They all of them play it very, very well. And our medical staff also are played incredibly well. And like the one other character who comes in, the guy who was supposed to fix the fucking phone line, I don't really remember figuring out what the fuck happened with him. He also plays it incredibly well. And his whole point is to be the kind of guy who flippantly just mocks and jokes about crazy people. And he does it in front of one of the doctors. Pisses off the fucking doctor, justifiably so. The acting here was incredibly good. And it actually is kind of surprising, because when you think about movies from the early 70s, which were being made for shock and nothing else, being made with almost no budget, the acting usually suffered badly. But here the acting was really, really solid, and that shocked me. I went into this thing expecting the writing to be I was expecting the writing to be kind of strong and the acting to be shit. Instead, it's flipped. The writing is kind of shit, and the acting is ridiculously strong, and I kind of like that. So, yeah, acting here, it is probably some of the best I've seen from low-budget early 70s films. That is saying a lot. Camera work. As much as I can complain about how poor the quality of the print was that was put onto this Blu-ray, I will say that the camera work here is incredibly good. There actually are a lot of shots that are very, very creative. Everything here works incredibly well. The camera work here is amazing. The lighting here is also rather, decent. Once more, I'm basing that on a really scratchy, really shit print. So I could be totally, totally wrong. And if I found a copy that was actually relatively clean or preserved in some, fashion, the lighting might actually suffer. Perhaps honestly, all of the scratches and the grain are kind of saving the fucking lighting a touch. I have no earthly clue. Sound mix. Once more, I can't really comment much on sound mix because of how poor the print is here. Guys, I had to crank the volume up on my fucking TV in order to hear anything. So, again, I'm going to blame that more on the print than on anything else. Perhaps if I could find a copy that was, that was actually watchable, at least more watchable than this, I would probably be able to make a better judgment. And I do know that there are copies of this all over YouTube, and I do highly recommend you guys go and try to find a copy. I will totally get more into my recommendation later, but hopefully you'll find one that's in better shape than the version I just fucking watched. So I'll just leave it at that. Actually, I'm trying to think if there's anything. Oh, alright, special effects. Totally forgot about special effects, because there's not much here in terms of special effects. But what is here is really decent. It is really good special effects. Again, based on the time period, based on the fact that it's a low-budget film. It came out in 1973. Special effects were not exactly ultra high up there in terms of quality. But what is here, at least considering the time frame and the budget, or rather considering the time period and the budget, is incredibly decent. And I do have to stress, if you're somebody who doesn't like the look of older special effects, then you are going to fucking hate them, because they look really awful by today's standards. But I don't care about today's standards when watching a movie made in 1973. I have to kind of set my mind to how things looked back then. And compared to everything else, this looks really good in terms of special effects. Ultimately, guys, when all is said and done, can I recommend Don't Look in the Basement? Yeah, I honestly can. As much as I railed against the writing, the reason why I'm going to recommend it, guys, is very simple. Because it's free. Okay, you can find this thing on almost any website. You can download it. You can throw it on a fucking DVD. Shit, you actually could sell DVDs of this thing, and you'd be fine. And it is totally worth, watching at free. And since I got it for free as a bonus feature on a fucking Blu-ray disc, I really am not going to complain too much. And what is here is certainly fascinating. I honestly wish that the writing was a little bit tighter, but oh well. I also wish that the print that was on the fucking Blu-ray was decent, and I'm not going to get that either, so I'm not going to bitch too much. What is here certainly works, and if you're a fan of 1970s horror flicks and cheeseball gore films, and you want to see a film that actually handles mental illness incredibly well, at least compared to how a lot of other films handle mental illness, then this thing is fantastic. It seriously is. It seriously is one of those films that I can totally recommend watching, if for no other reason than out of sheer curiosity. It is definitely a fascinating watch. Not really sure. Well, okay, I am probably going to watch it a second time, just not the shitty version I got on this Blu-ray disc. I'm going to have to go find a reasonable copy, and like I said, there's probably dozens of copies of it on fucking YouTube. It's going to take me about 5 seconds to find a copy that's in better shape and in better quality than this one. So yeah, I can totally recommend this thing, guys. Go on out, check it out. The movie honestly is not perfect. However, though, you can totally look past a whole lot of the flaws and see something here that at least tried, and it is for the most part entertaining. So, it honestly, okay, I think the best way I can sum it up is this, guys. This movie is in no way great. The thing, honestly, is barely even good, but it is good enough to at least check out once. So that much honestly means a whole hell of a lot, because I honestly wasn't even expecting that. I was kind of expecting a movie that was going to suffer from a whole lot of suffer from a whole lot of technical problems. It did, but not the technical problems I fucking thought. I honestly thought this thing was going to get bogged down with special effects problems and lighting issues and writing problems. Well, the writing problems were totally there. Instead, it was technical problems on the part of the company that put this thing on Blu-ray, and I swear to God I'm going to stop bitching about that. I certainly hope that the actual movie that Legless Corpse put on this thing, the actual sequel, looks decent, and considering the fact that I've gotten about 3 other films from Legless Corpse by way of Horror Pack, I certainly hope that they did a better job putting those things on disc than they did putting this on a disc. Anyway, I actually kind of feel like watching a few more cheesy 70s films, and I see my copy of I Spit on Your Grave on my Blu-ray shelf. And I'm talking about the good one from the 70s, not that dog shit remake I watched a couple of months ago. That thing fucking sucked balls. Anyway, I'm going to go watch I Spit on Your Grave. I'd probably go find a few more cheesy 70s horror films, because those are almost always a fun time for me. And that, my friends, is going to do it for this installment of Reaction and Review. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, take care. I will see you all in the near future. Peace.